Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for dropping by. So today it's time for another Follow Friday, where we like to talk about either a YouTube channel that might be worth following, or a Twitter account that might be worth following, or maybe a video that's worth watching, or a book that's worth reading, which is what I'd like to talk about today. The book, The Martian. So, there was a book, and it was made into a movie starring, I believe, Matt Damon, and it's called The Martian. Now, The Martian is a fiction book, and I listened to it based on the recommendation of Brian Brushwood when he was on the Twit podcast, This Week in Tech. Now, shout out to Brian Brushwood. I thought this was a great book. I listened to it based on his recommendation. I actually listened to the Audible version rather than reading because my eyes get tired. But anyway, it was a great book. So here's what the book is about. So in the book, the universe or world or whatever you want to say is essentially the same as our reality. The only difference is that NASA has already been to Mars, and they are making trips to Mars to take supplies there for future missions. And in one of these trips to Mars, one of the astronauts, part of his mission is to put up an antenna so they can have communications between Earth and Mars. And so he goes and he climbs up on this hill and he's putting up this antenna, and there is a windstorm comes along and knocks him and the antenna down. The antenna pierces his suit, and what happens is his crewmates come along. They find him. They find that his sensors are showing that there's no signs of life and everything. But what ends up happening is when he fell on the antenna, or the antenna fell on him, it pierced those some of the electronics that are supposed to be sensing his signs of life. And it didn't actually kill him. It just made those electronics malfunction. So they, all sad, go back to Earth, and he comes to and realizes that he's alone on Mars. Just very little food, only enough food to last for a little while, only so much shelter. He's got the vehicles that they use for doing their missions. So it's like a rover where they go out and they can harvest some electricity through solar panels and things like that. And so he has to figure out a way to survive with food, shelter, oxygen, all the basics of life on a totally hostile planet all by himself. And so he has to use science. He has to figure out a way to try to make his food last as long as possible. The book goes through this whole process of him figuring out exactly, if he rations his food, how long he can make it last, and what he would need to do if he wants to extend it. He ends up figuring out a way to grow his own food. He figures out a way to try to get some better shelter, things like that. It's really an interesting book. I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but I think it's really worth checking out. It's fiction, but I think it's got elements of getting you thinking about science. It's got some humor elements to it. I just thought it was a great book. So if you think you'd find this book interesting, I'll put the title in the description so you can just copy and paste it into whatever search it is that you want to take, or you can write it down and take it to your library, whatever you want to do. Maybe go and look for the Kindle edition, or order it from Barnes & Noble, or get it on Audible, whatever you want to do. I'll just put the title in the description. It's The Martian by Andy Weir. So hopefully that was interesting to you. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. About maybe a YouTube channel or Twitter. Yeah. Today it's time for another Follow Friday, and I thought, or a book that's worth reading, and that's what I'd love to talk about. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for dropping by. Today, allergies are a pain when you're trying to record and your eye wants to water. Because I don't listen to enough nonfiction. I'd like to find more. Crap, did I say that wrong? Paste it. It's called The Martian. It's by. Can't remember.